Just watching the Conor McGregor documentary, and if you've not seen it, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I love sports documentaries. I love the psychology, what you're getting to see behind the scenes. Love The Last Dance. Love recently Ronnie O'Sullivan documentary. It's brilliant to see what is actually happening behind the scenes. And what you get to see with Conor is, of course, you get to see what we already know. You get to see how confident he is, how charismatic, the energy he brings to every single situation that he's in. And you get to see the reason that he's been so successful. But we're also seeing that softer side to him. So you're seeing, him doing his community service after the bus attack with Khabib, and that kind of revenge fight. You get to see the community service, and therefore you're getting to see him quite humbly having conversations with religious people who were sort of talking to him on a human level, and then how Conor reflects on those situations and the positivity that he takes from those interactions. So you get to see that, and that's great. What I noticed, and it's really interesting because there is nobody been as successful in UFC as Conor. We all know that. And so the level of money, the level of wealth that Conor has achieved is absolutely fantastic. And he's done that for two reasons: because showmanship and what he brings to the press conferences, what he brings to the overall fight is fantastic, but he can also back that up with skill. There's no doubt about it. And it's fantastic. And fighters usually talk pretty well about Conor, about how he's changed and how he's globalized UFC, and that's all great. You got to see the stuff around Khabib and that kind of hatred and revenge, and you got to see the wrong way to do a training camp. And what I get from all this with watching, I've only seen the first 3 episodes of 4, but I get this from Conor. There's nobody in his corner, there's nobody in his team, there's nobody in his management who is able to tell Conor no. There's nobody who's able to say, we're doing this wrong. There's nobody who's able to challenge Conor. When you meet somebody with that level of charisma, with that level of energy, with that level of confidence, it's very, very difficult to get a word in edgeways. And John Kavanagh is a perfect example. He's very kind of mellow, very calm. He's been by Conor's side pretty much the entire time. I think he's not able to challenge Conor. He's not able to tell Conor no. So he knew during the Khabib camp that we were doing this the wrong way. Conor's just coming in the gym every day. He wants to just beat people up. He just wants to fight, spar, and win fights. And so there's a lot of negativity there. There's a lot of negative energy. There's a lot of there's the revenge, there's the hatred. It's all bad blood, and it's not the right way to put Conor in optimal shape for him to win fights. And obviously we know the outcome of that. Conor got destroyed in that fight. Absolutely, in Khabib fight. In Khabib words, he got mauled, and he lost that fight. And then you got to see, okay, I think, he talked about retirement, and then he went into the Cowboy fight. And whether that fight was, I still don't know, because I love Cowboy, and I love what he brings mentally and physically to the game. And he's obviously super, super talented and had an amazing career. But that fight only lasted 40 seconds. And Conor had got through, in a training camp, he got to a point where he was lethal. And so something had changed big. And so he worked on his skills, he'd obviously come back. And it's often that case when you kind of fall low, you have to kind of get back in the trenches again and build yourself back up. Because you know exactly if you've been a champion, you know exactly what has worked before. So you know everything you need to build. But is the motivation there? Is the motivation there when you're loaded? You've got loads of money in the bank, you've got loads of businesses, you don't need to fight, your family are already secure, everything that you came to UFC to do has already been achieved. But Conor will always talk about, the winning mentality, the records, the different belts, etc. That he's still motivated by that. It's still, I still doubt that that's to the level that it needs to be when Conor is so wealthy. And it's clear to see that he is, like, I want to say 80% about the money. So he did something different with the Cowboy fight and then finished him off in just 40 seconds. And I'm not sure if Cowboy took a dive in that. I'm not sure if Cowboy kind of like got mixed up in all the in all the kind of mental games, etc. I'd like to think no, but 40 seconds and he just didn't look himself. Then what he took to, he tried to get a fight for a long time, and then he said he was going to retire, and he said this thing with Dustin, let's just get in and have a charity match. And then eventually they went to the fight island in Abu Dhabi, and this was during COVID. He'd beat Dustin quite convincingly, something like 7-8 years before, 2014. And so he's going in that, and in John Kavanagh's words, Conor was in prime condition. His fight IQ was as high as it had ever been, and he was just a weapon ready to unleash on Dustin. And Dustin had it, there's no doubt about it, Dustin had his number. So what I got to see there was Conor was in prime condition. Conor was ready, completely ready. There's no excuses around there. And Dustin just had his number with those calf kicks. And he just kept chopping him down and chopping him down and chopping him down. And even after that first round, where it was quite clear that right leg was getting beat up, it was already red, it was already sore, and that literally stops you walking. So it stops you dancing, stops you moving around, it stops you being able to kind of like play with the distance. It essentially makes you a sitting duck, and that's exactly how Dustin finished him off. And what that did is not only finished him off for that, Conor needed then to regroup, come back a completely different fighter. Otherwise, Dustin had shown not only himself, but the entire roster how you beat Conor McGregor. So that was really interesting, but not even after that first round, when it was quite clear what was going to keep happening with the Dustin fight. John Kavanagh wasn't able to say, at that point, you've got to keep away from those leg kicks. They're lethal. And so I think, as successful as Conor has been, there's obviously the money that's a big factor in how motivated he is just to get out of bed in the morning. But not having somebody in your corner or your team or your management is just able to say, no, and just be really forceful with that. Listen, we're on the right path. We've got to get off this and get on. And I know John Kavanagh has said stuff like, unless Conor's super motivated and he ticks all the boxes, then I'm not going into another camp with him. He said that, but when you've got the level of money that Conor has, and you can pay the people the money that they, and that's an entire it's an entire staff of people that are feeding off that Conor circus, then it's very difficult to say no to those, to be able to coach him through another, and essentially that's making John Kavanagh more and more wealthy each time, and the team around him. You've got to have people who can tell you no in your corner. You've got to have people who can challenge you. What we saw in the Ronnie O'Sullivan documentary, and I know it's snooker, but so important, because essentially psychology is, the brains are the same, whether you're playing snooker, whether you're playing basketball, whether you're running, whether you're fighting, is we saw multiple people in Ronnie's corner, his mates, Damien Hirst, the people he hangs about with. We saw his psychologist, we saw his coach. They can all tell Ronnie no, and he will listen to them because he respects them. And I'm not saying that Conor doesn't respect people. I'm just saying that I don't think he listens. And he hasn't got. There's people in Ronnie's corner who can just say no. You're not going. You're not going to the next tournament, or you're doing it wrong, or you're going off the rails now, and therefore because he's got people in his corner. Maybe this is a money thing. Ronnie's got plenty of money, but not to the level that Conor has. But Ronnie is motivated by winning. And I know Conor is motivated by winning, but when you've already got all that Conor has, and you know the discipline that it takes physically and mentally to go through the trenches again, to build up and build up and build up over months in order to put yourself in the peak condition that you need to be now to be fighting the top 10 guys in the world, don't think Conor has got that motivation anymore. And what he does need is somebody just to grab him by the scruff of the neck and tell him no, or challenge him, and he hasn't got it. So for me, that's what I took away from that. You've got to have people surrounding you who can challenge you, because it's like the executive, it's like the CEO in a company who nobody can talk up to, because essentially he's paying their wages. The company is only moving forward as fast as that guy's brain. It's as simple as that. And you want to be the most, if you're the CEO of a company, you want to be the most stupid person in that room. You want to be surrounded by people who are way smarter than you. You want to be the dumbest guy in the room. And that's how your company thrives, because you've got people who are employed for reasons, and you're able to recruit and delegate stuff to much more talented people. It should be like that in the different areas of your game in sports as well. What do you think? Do you think the same? Have you seen the Conor documentary? Are you as excited about sports documentaries as me? Do you feel that it's great to see behind the curtain of what's actually happening? Or do you disagree completely? Do you think that Conor has done whatever he needs to do now and can sail off into the sunset and forget about everything else? Fine if you disagree. I'd love to hear what your comments are.